The year was 1916, and Europe was drowning in blood and mud. The war that was supposed to end quickly had turned into a drawn-out nightmare, consuming millions in its unforgiving grasp. Along the Western Front, soldiers huddled in their trenches, waiting for the next order, the next attack, the next moment that might be their last. Captain Edward Harrow adjusted his helmet as he peered over the frostbitten parapet of the trench. The sky was a dull gray, the air thick with the acrid stench of gunpowder and decay. His unit, the 77th Infantry, had been stationed here for months, holding a vital stretch of land that both sides refused to relinquish. The cold gnawed at their bones, but it was the silence that truly unsettled them. After days of relentless bombardment, the battlefield was eerily quiet. "Captain," reports from the scouts, Sergeant Wallace approached, his breath visible in the frigid air. "Enemy movements detected in no man's land. Looks like they're preparing something." Harrow clenched his jaw. "We need confirmation. If they're coming, we have to be ready." Wallace nodded and disappeared into the maze of trenches. Harrow glanced at his men, tired, hollow-eyed, yet unwavering. He had led them through hell before, and he would do it again. The storm breaks. Night fell, and with it came the first signs of an impending assault. Flares illuminated the sky, casting ghostly shadows over the battlefield. Then, without warning, artillery shells rained down, shaking the earth itself. The trenches became a death trap as explosions sent mud and shrapnel flying. "Take cover," Harrow shouted, throwing himself against the trench wall. The barrage lasted an eternity. When it finally ceased, the real attack began. A chilling battle cry echoed through the night as enemy soldiers surged forward, rifles gleaming in the flickering light. "Hold the line," Harrow roared. The 77th opened fire, bullets tearing through the advancing ranks. Machine guns rattled, cutting down waves of enemy troops, but still, they pressed on. Grenades landed in the trench, sending men flying. The air filled with screams and the scent of blood. Harrow fired his pistol, dropping an enemy soldier mere feet away. He barely had time to register the horror before another came at him with a bayonet. Dodging, he plunged his own knife into the man's chest, feeling the warmth of blood spill over his gloves. Wallace appeared beside him, panting. "Captain, we can't hold much longer. They're overwhelming us. Fall back to the second line of defense," Harrow ordered, knowing it was their only chance. The long night. The remnants of the 77th retreated through the labyrinth of trenches, setting up a desperate last stand. The enemy followed, relentless. The fighting became brutal, close combat, bayonets, and fists replacing rifles as the trenches filled with the dead and dying. Harrow found himself fighting alongside his men, refusing to stand back as an officer. He struck down another enemy soldier before helping a wounded private to his feet. By dawn, the enemy had finally pulled back. The trench was barely holding together, bodies strewn everywhere. Harrow slumped against the wall, his uniform soaked in mud and blood. "We lost too many," Wallace muttered. "We're still here," Harrow said, though even he wasn't sure for how much longer. Desperation and betrayal. Days passed in a miserable haze of hunger and exhaustion. Supplies were low. Morale was lower. The men whispered of retreat, of desertion. One night, Wallace approached Harrow, looking grim. "Sir, there's talk of surrender. Some of the men, they don't think we can hold out." Harrow felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "We fight until we have no choice. This trench is our home until command says otherwise." But the whispers grew louder. Then, one night, a shot rang out in the darkness. Harrow rushed to the source and found a soldier dead, shot in the back. "Deserters," Wallace spat. "They're trying to run. And someone's making sure they don't." Harrow's mind raced. If his men lost faith in each other, their battle was already lost. The final stand. The enemy struck again at dawn, launching an all-out offensive. The trench became a slaughterhouse. Harrow led from the front, his pistol emptying round after round. Wallace fought beside him until he was struck down, a bullet tearing through his chest. Go, Captain, Wallace gasped, blood trickling from his lips. End this. With a roar of rage, Harrow charged, rallying the last of his men. They fought with nothing left to lose, pushing the enemy back, step by bloody step. Then, the sound of distant artillery filled the air. Reinforcements. A wave of relief washed over Harrow as Allied troops stormed in, driving the enemy away. The battle was over. Aftermath. Harrow stood among the wreckage, staring at the countless bodies. The trench was saved, but at what cost? The war would go on, claiming more lives, more souls. As he looked upon the fallen, he whispered a silent vow, to remember them, to honor them. The shadows of the battlefield would never fade, but neither would their sacrifice. Epilogue. Years later, a memorial stood where the trench once lay. Harrow, now an old man, visited often, paying respects to those who never left. The world had changed, but the war had shaped him forever. And as long as he remembered, they would never be forgotten.